Morning, everybody. Welcome. We are just getting started right here. Let me share my screen again, and then we're going to be moving around here in the room. We're in a room with about like 25 some people in here, so you may or may not see the person here, but you'll be able to see our PowerPoint slides, and hopefully you'll be able to hear us. If something goes offline or something, type in the chat and let us know. So let me see if I can do our share again.
You're sharing your slide.
Oh, it's already sharing?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, all right. Okay, good. We're brought up here. Everything's here. Okay, everybody. Well, yeah, thank you so much for those who came here in person. Thank you so much to everybody else who is here joining us online. My name is Brian Green. For those who don't know me, I am with the Nature Conservancy as part of the Adirondack Park Invasive Plant Program. So you'll see APIPP up here, and this is our spring partner meeting. We do 2 partner meetings a year. We try to move them all around our 6.6 million acre prism, and we're thrilled to be here in Akwesasne today, and going to be highlighting later on some of the great work that the St. Regis Mohawk Tribe is doing with emerald ash borer. But I wanted to start off first with this reading. I'm reading this book right now. It's called Wandering Home. It's by Bill McKibben. A long walk through America's most hopeful landscape. And he had a line in it where he's walking from hiking from where he works in Vermont at Middlebury College back to his home in Blue Mountain Lake. And so he's talking about this landscape, and he had this this line that really resonated with me. So I wanted to read it here. He said, I've not been able to drag myself away from this small corner of the planet. To me, this country on either side of Lake Champlain, though it has no name and appears on no map as a single unit, constitutes one of the world's few great regions, a place more complete and more full of future promise than any other spot in the American Atlas. This region, Adamant, the Adirondacks, includes the fertile farms and small woodlots directly beneath me in the Champlain Valley, where a new generation of settlers is trying to figure out a new way to responsibly inhabit the land, ways to farm and log and invest that enrich in the fullest sense of the world. It encompasses the fine small city of Burlington to the north, and across the lake it is made whole by the matchless eastern wilderness of the Adirondacks, the largest park in the lower 48, 6 million acres, bigger than Glacier, Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, and Yosemite combined. At the risk of hyperbole and chauvinism, let me state it plainly. In my experience, the world contains no finer blend of soil and rock and water and forest than that found in the scene laid out before me. A few just as fine, perhaps, but none finer, and no place where the essential human skills, cooperation, husbandry, restraint, offer more possibility for competent and graceful inhabitation, for working out the answers to the questions that the planet is posing in this age of ecological pinch and social fray. So we are this community, we are these landscape, we are the people who are trying to figure out these ecological and social fray and problems and things. So I thought this was a great way to start it off. And the other thing that we're going to do right now is we're going to go around the room, just everybody say their name and say the organization that you represent. If you're online, you can type in your name or your organization into the chat. And then also, Robert, right in front of you, can you pick up there is there's a sign-in sheet. So we can, so you can pass that around and make sure everybody, if you haven't already signed in, you can sign in. So we'll start first with Robert.
Hi, I'm Robert Smith, and I'm the Trusted Restoration Resiliency Coordinator for Sleepwell PRISM.
And I'm Anna Hardiman, and I'm the Aquatic Invasive Species Manager for APIPP, the Nature Conservancy.
I'm Sean Kittle. I'm the Communications Manager with APIPP.
Good morning, Ari Miller-Leinwall, the Terrestrial Invasive Species Manager.
Good morning, Linda Page. I'm with the St. Lawrence County Environmental Management Council. We're an advisory board of the St. Lawrence County Board of Legislators.
Well, say good day. I volunteer with APIPP at the New York State Hemlock Initiative, searching for hemlock woolly adulterated, any invasive pests out there, a lot of beach-weed disease things, summer months. My wife and I do Lake Management tracker on Saturday Lake for mine. Yeah. We have a mama plot with black ash. So that's what we do.
David Field from the Lake Clear Association.
Emily Tyner with Lake Clear Association. I'm the environmental chair and help to monitor and manage for aquatic and terrestrial invasive species in Lake Clear. Well, not in Lake Clear with Clamar, but the terrestrials in the vicinity.
Hi, I'm Keely Jark. I work for the Nature Conservancy and their Indigenous Partnership Program.
I'm Caroline Kessner, Conservation and GIS Analyst for both APIPP and SLEEPO.
We'll go to the back first.
With Carlin O'Hara, work with the St. Regis Mohawk Tribe, a land resource labor. Say about the yield trend, I work in a land resource. Tyler Crewley, land resources, acting technician, small tribe.
So work, I'm a land resource labor.
Corey Jared, I'm gonna see you in a little bit.
I'm Sunita Howard, Clean Water Community Advocate of the Adirondack Council.
I'm Marky Moffett. I'm a Stewardship Manager at Osceola Freshwater Center.
John Adams, St. Regis Mohawk Tribe, newly acquired GIS. That's it.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Jessica Espisa. I'm the Assistant Director for the St. Regis Mohawk Tribes Environment.
And I am Angelo Johnson, the Acting Land Resource Program Manager for the St. Regis Mohawk Tribe.
Awesome, great. Well, it's great to have so many familiar friends and new faces in the room, and also all those people online typing in and joining in. Okay, here's the outline for today's meeting. Our team's going to go over through some updates, and then I'm going to present on the milfoil management and water quality project that we've worked on for the past 2 years. Then the real reason you all came here today is to hear Angela talk about the great work that the St. Regis Mohawk Tribe is doing on emerald ash borer management of ash. And then we'll have a lunch, kind of informal lunch in here, and then we're going to go, we'll sign off online for everybody, and then we're going to stay around here, have some lunch, informal networking, and they really got to do some cool log pounding, and then hopefully the weather cooperates, go out to a site and see some of these stands where they're managing ash. So with that, I'm going to kick it off and give it off to Ari, who's going to start off with talking about our goal 1.
Sorry to interrupt, but if anyone's new to the building and you're looking for the restroom, the easiest way to get there is exit out this door. And they are to your right. And our emergency exit are out these doors into the left.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you for everybody joining in person and virtually this morning. Again, I'm Ari Giller-Linewall, the Terrestrial Invasive Species Manager with APIPP with the Adirondack PRISM. And I'm excited to give you a bit of a recap of what we've got planned for the season, and highlight some forest pests and invasive plants that are just emerging in the region. Give you an update in terms of what we're doing as the APIPP team about it and what everybody can do to help.
Sorry, you're good. I was just trying to hide that.
First and foremost, a big project we've already done this calendar year is the Forest Pest Hunter Hemlock Willia Delicate program. I'm talking about it, but the credit really goes to this group. Folks like Bill and other forest pest hunters getting out. We adopted 19 different trails within the Adirondacks, reported 80 hours. This is a note where we have this forest pest survey 123 form. So I suspect we've spent more than 80 hours out there. So if you've surveyed for hemlock and haven't reported your hours, please get on that form and let us know. But goodness gracious, in IMAP Invasives, the database that we report to, 4 people over 190 confirmed observations of HWA, but thankfully over 700 places where we're reporting where it doesn't exist, which is also super important as we build out this database. It's been awesome to join folks in different communities with different groups. We had 4 in-person and 1 virtual event this year for training. And we have a beach leaf disease survey season for this group in the summer. IMAP Invasives is available any time of year. So we can use a lot of different materials to survey for other species. Hemlock woolly adelgid and beech leaf disease are the two that APIPP really supports this forest pest hunter program on. But we'll take your observations wherever. If you want to look for where APIPP's maps are, our resource library on our website, Carolyn just helped create a new terrestrial invasive species mapper. It shows all the plants in our database and also the status of those sites. So it's certainly not all the data points. That's where we need you to report with IMAP invasives. But if you want to see with a high level of granularity where our plants are, where our forest pests are, this is a great way to do that. I also get a lot of questions in terms of, I've got this plant on my property, I've got knotweed on my property. I just want to highlight that APIPP has something called the Landowner's Guide to Knotweed Control. It's an excellent resource in terms of scoping these projects in different ways. You might be able to take it on yourself. Our annual report, I know we talked about it at our winter partner meeting, but the team's really proud of it. I think it really encapsulates not just the work we do, but a really good way to handle the data. For our terrestrial invasive plant sites, we've got over 2,200 of them. And over half, we're not seeing plants or those sites are deemed locally eradicated. There's some sites that we're not able to get to just because of the vastness of the region. So like going out, doing the work, managing the data, reporting on it, it's all things that I think are really important and hopefully are valuable resources for the whole community. So in terms of these resources, we've got a lot of them here today. On our website, you can order them. We're happy to ship them out. It was great to join like campground staff as they were onboarding and share a lot of this information. So your neighborhood, your group, your agency, if you're not clued into this stuff, feel free to contact us. We would love to get you more involved. Things I want to highlight is our terrestrial invasive species field guide, tree of heaven ID sheet, beech leaf disease ID sheet. We're about to come out with Japanese stiltgrass, which I'll talk about in a second. Any other needs you have, any other gaps for resources that don't exist, let us know. We want to create these things for you all to use. Sorry about the text. In 6 minutes, I don't think I have time to talk about all of it. Our annual report's a great resource, but we're up to some things this field season. Alexis is starting in a couple weeks as our steward and Rhoda's returning as our assistant. So that's our core team of 3 within the Nature Conservancy. We'll be working with contractors too. So what are we going to be up to? Finding the things we don't know about, emerging plants, forest pests, managing prioritized plant populations along rights of way, ecological corridors. We're going to continue our campground work, a lot of like high visitation recreational areas, trailheads. And then emerald ash borer, we've completed the release of these specialized predators, these biocontrols in 23 and 24. But last year and now this year, we're using these yellow pan traps to try to see if they're establishing at their release site in Warren County. This gives me a lot of hope in terms of like ash not being extirpated from the region at large and keeping the populations of these emerald ash borer pests in check over time. So I really wish everybody a safe, productive, rewarding field season. And this really highlights some of the things we'll be up to. I think managing the plants is increasingly important as forest pests may cause tree mortality over time. As those trees die, they might daylight the forest floor. It's a source of disturbance that we might not be able to control, but managing, finding, suppressing, containing these emerging plant species, I think will go a long way in forest health for the region at large, as well as things like managing deer and just thinking about the regeneration of forests over the long term. Some of the plants that we're dealing with in this regard are swallowwort, only really a dozen sites known in Adirondack Park, and bittercress. Shout out to Lake Clear, who's helping with some of that. We also want to keep an eye out on Floodwood Road, where some of that was detected last year. These are some other species where we're being quite successful so far in terms of finding these populations early and with proper early detection, rapid response. These populations are growing instead of shrinking, lessening how many parcels they're on instead of increasing. So I'm really happy to report that that's the case for species like mile-emitted, Scotch broom, Japanese angelica tree. Also with wineberry, this is just so far in the Lake George watershed, but definitely an invasive rubus, an invasive berry species. Tree of heaven is another one of concern. The bark almost looks like a melon, can look a bit like a sumac with its multiple leaflets, but you have these nodes right at the base of the leaves. And when you crush them up, it smells not like nothing like sumac, but rotten peanut butter is the best descriptor I've heard. Japanese stiltgrass. I said I was going to be talking about it again in December, and here we are. We're really excited to come up with best management practices for this species. It can be identified by the off-center silvery midrib. What gives me pause about this is its seeds persistence in the soil for 5+ years and its impact on forest regeneration with these dense thatches that it can form. So I'll certainly be reporting back on best management practices and ID resources for this. And certainly, like, that's a lot that APIPP manages in terms of our projects, but we cannot do it alone. It's awesome to be in this group of folks from the St. Regis Tribe, the partners of APIPP. We'd really appreciate your partnership in these prevention, outreach, management activities. I think we make a much better impact together. So right now, I'm excited to announce that Monday, June 8th, the APIPP terrestrial team will be hosting a spring partner training day. So keep an eye out for that on our APIPP event page. Both open to the public and partners. We'll focus on how to report invasives and identify. And I'm really excited to work with partners to co-host work days throughout the summer. I think that's super important. Get people energized doing this work, bring it back home to their own properties, their own communities, and capacity building in terms of training staff with these specialized skills that I think our region increasingly is going to need. So a lot of talking. I hope I kept it to 6 minutes. I'm going to hand it off to him.
All right, hi everyone. I'm Anna Hardiman, the Aquatic Invasive Species Manager with APIPP. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're looking forward to in the 2026 field season, with more of an emphasis on the programs and the things that you all can be involved with, because that's why we're all here, is to collaborate and work together. So let's see. First up, we got lake protectors. So each summer we spend a lot of our time doing aquatic invasive species surveys on lots and lots of water bodies. And so there are a few of us in-house that do those surveys, but we also rely a lot on volunteers and other trained professionals out in the field to help us with this, just because we are so fortunate to have a lot of really beautiful water. And we can't do all the surveying by ourselves. So we have this program, the Lake Protectors Program, and there are a couple of simple ways that you can get involved with this surveying, and that's by attending a training. We have multiple trainings throughout the summer where you can learn about aquatic invasive species. We have a list that we work with that I'll show you in a minute, and you'll learn how to identify them, and you'll learn some of the survey technique that we use when we go out in the field to look for them. And then you'll have the chance to adopt a water body. So there are plenty of places that could use someone to go out intentionally and look for these invasive species. And we have a wonderful sign-up map that we use, and you can adopt it officially and plan to monitor that water body once a year. And then ideally that can continue. We have volunteers who have monitored the same water body and maybe even a few for multiple years. So a really great way for people to stay in tune with the water near them. And usually the people who are out on the water most know it best. So it's great if someone can go out and survey it if they're unfamiliar with it, but folks who are close to it and who spend a lot of time there are the best people to be out monitoring for changes. And this is the list that we're working with for 2026. We have 16 species that will train volunteers to identify out on the water. There are 16 total, 8 plants and 8 animals. So we have these already on the schedule. So if you're looking for things to do this summer, please consider these trainings as an option. We have a virtual training in June, so you can do that from anywhere, which makes it a nice option. But then we have a couple of in-person trainings too that are on the calendar. We have one in Blue Mountain Lake in July, and then one in Cranberry Lake in August. And the virtual option is great, and we'll still go over plant ID, but the in-person workshops are really wonderful because we bring in specimens that you can look at and hold and touch, and it's a much better way to get to know the plants than just pictures, although that's a good start. So I encourage you to consider one of those options. And all of the data that you're collecting as a volunteer and as APIPP, when we're out doing these surveys too, it all goes into this beautiful database that we have available on our website. You can use it, anyone can use it to see the aquatic invasive species distribution across the APIPP region. So this is a really great tool, and if you haven't checked it out, I encourage you to. It shows where all of the aquatic invasive species are. You can search for water bodies. And look at one that you care about and see what's going on inside that. You can see what's going on around the water bodies that you're familiar with. And yeah, so it's another tool that we are all building together by doing these surveys. So this data is very important, and it builds into something that is extremely useful. We're also hoping to have a couple of summer adventures on the water this year. We're working with some local organizations in like the Adirondack Lake area to partner and get out on the water for some paddles. This will be a chance to, spend time on the water, which is great, together, and look at some plants. So that's something we're putting together and we're looking forward to. So keep an eye out for details about that. Our other main program, aside from the Lake Protector program, is the Lake Management Tracker. And this is a great way for lakes who are doing management, or maybe not, who are just keeping an eye on invasive milfoils in their lakes. So if you are in that scenario where you're a part of a lake association or a volunteer group, or maybe it's just you and you're feeling really enthusiastic, you have the opportunity to track the growth of milfoil in a very organized way, so you can really see what is happening over the years. So you do an annual census, doing a survey technique that we can support you in learning and get you the technology to go out and do. This is an example of some of the data collected last summer by a participating lake. So yeah, we had 7 lakes participate last summer, and this image is from one of the trainings that we did out on one of those lakes. So if this is something that sounds like it could be useful for you and you're planning and trying to figure out how to manage milfoil best, or just you want to get a better idea of what it's doing in your lake at all, we can set something up, or you can talk to me and I'll try to answer some questions about what that might look like. There are a couple of projects too that are ongoing this summer. We have a few invasive species removal projects. Each year we've been going to Lake Alice to do some removal of water chestnut. So we'll be doing that again this year. And we participate with a couple of different organizations doing management on Lake Champlain. And these images are from last summer in both of those places. We're also going to do eDNA monitoring again this year. This will be the 4th summer of doing that. We're fine-tuning our methodology and trying to figure out how to best use this tool and how we want to continue using that in the future. So each year we've gotten a little bit closer to figuring out how useful it is for us. And we're still developing that and working with partners to do that as well. And lastly, we have the Lake Champlain Boat Launch AIS monitoring project. For 3 years, we had contractors going in and removing aquatic invasive species, milfoil, from boat launches on Lake Champlain. And after they left, we would go in and do a survey to see how that was looking and how much of it was removed successfully. And then now that the contractors have finished their time removing, we're going to continue our monitoring to see what the long-term impact of that removal is. So just kind of working to answer some of the questions that we're encountering and trying to be a part of this team that is working to answer the questions of aquatic invasive species management and working with our partners to do so. So thank you all to you for being a big part of that and for helping us. And if there are ways that you would like to continue partnering aquatically, then please approach me and we can talk. But consider those trainings, those Lake Protector trainings are a great opportunity also to meet other folks who are interested in the same things that you are and who are really motivated to find some answers. So that is my portion of the update. If you have questions about any of these projects or programs, I'll be around, so please find me. Thank you.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Sean Kittle. I'm the communications manager with APIPP. So I handle all of our communications, education, and outreach initiatives. And I'm proud to say I just reached the 4-year mark with APIPP. So it's an exciting anniversary. I'm happy to be here. So on top of all the normal, suite of educational workshops and training, some of which Anna and Ari mentioned, we have 4 exciting projects that have been in the works for a little bit now that are getting near to completion that I want to tell you about for coming up this spring and summer. We have a video shoot that we did. We're planning a brand new event. It's very exciting. We're creating a new brochure. And then we're doing a major update to adkinvasives.com. So I'll just tell you a little bit about each of those. First up, we have the Forest Pest Hunters video shoot. So we've done a lot of trainings about hemlock woolly adelgid and beech leaf disease, and some of them are quite long, an hour and a half long. We've had some great speakers. We've done some deep dives into those invasive species. But I really wanted something that I could just put in front of people that was maybe 2 or 3 minutes long, just to show them it's great being a forest pest hunter. It's easy. You can do it. We want to train them how to identify hemlock trees and HWA quickly. We want to show them that it's really easy to use IMAP invasives. And then we want to recruit more volunteers because we always need more people out there. So that's the thought process behind how this video was born. It's in the post-production phase right now, so it should be completed soon. The first part was HWA identification. So Ari, who you just heard from, and Leah Smyslov from Lake George Land Conservancy. Leah, if you're on, thank you again for being part of this. Were kind enough to be the stars of the video. So they started off with just the basics, like why is hemlock woolly adelgid bad? And then here's how you identify a hemlock. And as they're talking, the videographer did a really good job of getting some nice close-ups to kind of demonstrate those points. And then they moved on to looking for HWA, and that includes looking up into the canopy with your headlamp. And again, there's a really nice shot in the video. This is a screenshot that shows what it looks like when the light goes across. Like it actually works. You can shine your light up and see hemlock woolly adelgid better. And then we move right into reporting hemlock woolly adelgid or any invasive species for that matter with the IMAP Invasives app. So there's a nice little voiceover and it quickly shows you, hey, you just take out your phone, you open up the app, you do your report and it's done. And the idea here isn't to train people how to use IMAP invasives. That's a whole other video if you want to do that. This is just to show like, hey, look, it's easy to identify hemlocks. It's easy to identify hemlock woolly adelgid, and it's really easy to use IMAP invasives to report invasive species. Those are the main messages. And then the last message is being a forest pest hunter is a great way to give back. So the final sort of scene of the video follows, Ari and Leah are actually right down there, but it follows them as they take this nice hike up Buck Mountain to this beautiful viewpoint. And there's a nice voiceover, basically just encouraging people to become a forest pest hunter. So look out for that. Unfortunately, a lot of times in communication, you're gathering the resources you need for the following season. So we did this like right at the beginning of spring, end of winter. We've got it edited and everything like that. So we'll be able to use this, late next fall when we start getting people excited about being forest pest hunters again. But it should be up on our website before that. So here they are approaching the viewpoint. Okay, so back in October, we launched a brochure called Love Your Lakes, and there's a bunch there. Help yourselves, please. Let me know if you want more. And that led to the idea of, well, hey, why don't we coordinate the brochure with an event? So do kind of like a whole launch. So we came up with a Sips and Science Love Your Lakes event, and it happened at the Hotel Saranac. We had a little over 100 people there. It was 8 or 10 partner organizations, and a couple of them are here, set up some really nice interactive tables. That's actually my daughter, Lucina, there on the left, and her friend looking under a microscope. Lucina wants to be a geologist when she grows up, so I'm very excited about that. And then we had 3 short talks in the ballroom. They were maybe 15 minutes each, and great attendance. People were really into it. People are asking when the next one is. So the reason I'm mentioning this to you is we're expanding it to be a Love Your Lakes and Lands event. And so that'll happen during Invasive Species Awareness Week, the date of which is behind there. Carolyn, can you read it? So I get the right.
June 8th to 14th.
June 8th to 14th. And this will be on June 11th, Thursday, June 11th. Yes, for this event. So this is going to happen at Dewey Mountain. It's basically an expansion of the Love Your Lakes event. It's going to include lands as well. It's also going to be outside. There will be 3 speakers. Speaking indoors, and again, it'll just be 3 short 15-minute or so talks about various ways to love your lakes and lands. There'll be 1 talk on aquatic invasive species. And there's going to be all sorts of interactive things that you can do here. So there's going to be a boat wash station and a boat wash demonstration. The Adirondack Loon Center for Loon Conservation, is going to have a tackle box check. So you can bring your tackle box and they'll check it for lead sinkers, and then they'll replace any lead sinkers that you have. I just found out this morning that we have someone from Audubon doing a bird walk, so that's really cool. We're going to have a whole workshop on how to put together a float plan and safely prepare to go paddling, and hopefully, not confirmed yet, but hopefully another one on how to prepare for a hike and leave no trace principles. So a lot of really neat things like that people can come in and we want to connect people more with nature, but we also want to get them thinking about stewardship and how to become involved or engaged, and at the very least be responsible stewards of the land as they're out there enjoying themselves. And of course, there'll be plenty of information on how you can volunteer for things like forest pest hunters and lake protectors. So mark your calendars, and there'll be a food and drink truck on site as well. And then on that note, we did our Love Your Lakes brochure that launched last October, and we are going to be doing a Love Your Lands brochure this year as well. That should get going in the next month or so. So very similar to this, what we did here is we brought in 2 partner organizations and we helped craft the language. So we have 8 tips here on how you can love the lakes that you love to use, that you love to go out on. There's a couple in here about invasive species, and then there's a bunch of other messages too. Lose the lead, keep it wild, give wildlife space. The Love Your Lands will be similar. We'll partner with a couple organizations. We'll have them help us put together the messages. And then I'm guessing we'll have probably about 8 messages on that as well. So look out for that. Maybe in the next month and a half, should be printed. And last but not least, I could do a whole presentation on this. So if you're interested in learning more about redoing a website, please. But I just want to touch on a couple things because we've been working on this since about November, I think, and we're getting into I'd say we're probably about 85% done with it now. I feel like the biggest bulk of the work is done for us. But this is our website now. This is adkinvasives.com. And it's not a terrible website. I've definitely seen much worse, but let's be honest, it loads really slowly. The user experience isn't great. The functionality in the back end, if you want to go in and update something, it leaves a lot to be desired, and it just looks a little bit outdated. So redoing a website is actually a great exercise. So this is our map of our website. It's called a wireframe. I've heard it called a website map, different things. This really gives you a chance to look at your website and think, does this make sense? Like, is there anything we can get rid of? Is there anything we can combine? Is the order right? People read from left to right. So when they come to your website and they look at that menu bar, are they going from left to right in a logical sense? Like, are they seeing the first thing you want them to see first? So we did a lot of work on this, restructuring things, moving things around, improving things. And here's a sneak peek at what the new website will look like. This might change a little bit, but this is basically going to be it. We reordered the menu bar. There's a lot more white space. It just looks cleaner. It looks less cluttered. The photo pops a lot more because there's less going on. When you scroll down, you see where it says mission down there. So if you scroll down, if you're on the page, that's what you'll see. These wings flap, which I think is really, really cool. It doesn't take much to impress me. But yeah, like when you scroll over the little spotted laserfly wings flap. But you can see, like, it's just more direct. Like, our mission is right there. Like, boom, it's in your face. What we do is right there. It's really clear. So it'll be a lot easier to navigate for people. And this is just one example of a page. So we did not have an invasive species 101 page that really just spelled out, like, what is an invasive species? What are their traits? Why are they bad? Why are we talking about this? So now we have that. And you'll see here we have identify, report, and volunteer. And this is again, I could give a whole presentation on this, but just to not get into it too deep. But one thing with a website is, like, what are the main actions you want people to do when they come to your website? We don't want them to just read and then go about their day. There are things we want them to do, right? We want them to learn how to identify invasive species, how to report them, and how to volunteer. If someone's reading this and they're like, okay, I'm convinced I want to volunteer, I don't want them to have to look around to figure out how they do that. So this bar here stays, no matter where they are on the website, they can always click that volunteer button and get to the volunteer page. Or they can always click that report button and learn how to report an invasive species. So just some of the changes we made that hopefully will improve the user experience, but also get people to do those actions that we want them to do. And so if you have a website, just something to think about, what are the goals for that website? What do you want them to do? And make sure that they don't have to look around to find that. And that's it. So I'm happy to talk about any of this more. We have a ton of educational outreach materials. If you want some, let me know. If you want more than we have here, let me know and I'll send them to you. They're all free. So, and we have some samples over here. So thank you.
Thanks, Sean. And I'm going to take us home with updates about our goal for innovation and research. So as Ari mentioned earlier, we have a lot of great reports that summarize our work from the past year. One of those reports is a campground report, which summarizes the work of our seasonal steward. This is a great report. There's a lot of great information in it. We've been lucky enough to have the same steward for the past 5 years. She's moved on, so we don't have her again this year, but new steward, new report. It's a good time to relook at this report and change it since it hasn't really been changed in a number of years. So the current report is 100 pages. I'm going to guess there's no one in this room who's actually read all 100 pages of that report. But so the new report is going to be more succinct, significantly fewer pages, and hopefully more useful to folks who might want to use it. So stay tuned for that. At the end of this summer, we may also be developing it into a story map. So a clickable, interactive, online version summarizing this work. So I'm excited to work on this. And if you want to access this resource or any other resources, here's the link on our website. And then I just wanted to touch on briefly some of the research projects that we're currently working on. So a research project that I'm leading is this one, which is looking at the history of invasion and pathways for invasion on lakes throughout the park. So if you were at our last partner meeting, you might have heard me talk about an analysis I did looking at first invasions throughout the park. So, where in the park did we see the first instance of knotweed or emerald ash borer, things like that. This is taking that work down to a smaller level and looking at first invasion instances by lake. So where in each individual lake was the first invasion, and are there any conclusions or pathways for invasions that we can derive from that, and also seeing how that relates to boat launches and boat steward programs. So I actually completed a first run of this analysis a couple months ago as part of my grad school work. And as part of that first run, we identified some areas that if we had different and better data sets would be able to improve the analysis. So I spent a couple months looking for those data sets. I've gotten some of them thanks to Paul Smith College, Adirondack Watershed Institute. And so now I'll be able to rerun the analysis with some improved data sets. And then another research project that we're working on, Anna and Brian are definitely more of the experts on this project, but I'll just touch on it briefly. So APIPP is looking at milfoil hybridization in partnership with SUNY Oneonta. So some of the research questions for this project are we seeing different genetic populations of variable milfoil throughout New York? And if so, are we seeing any patterns or clustering of those populations, and can we derive any pathways for invasion for that? And we actually talked a little bit more about this project on our March webinar. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more, feel free to check out that webinar. And then sort of on a similar note, a lot of our research projects come out of conversations with partners. So we're always looking to hear what our partners are working on or research needs that they have. Brian's going to talk a little bit about a project that we've been working on for the past few years that came out of conversations with partners. So, please feel free to reach out to us with questions you have about invasive species or projects you're working on. Our most recent partner survey indicated our partners were working on 15 different projects. So, please reach out to me, come find me at lunch or email me. We're always happy to talk about this more and see how we can partner and address these questions that our partners are having. And on a similar note, we just wanted to thank all of our partners for all the great data that they submit documenting their invasive species efforts. As Brian mentioned, we cover 6 million acres. We have 4.7 staff, so we can't do it all. So we really appreciate everyone for the work that you're doing and for documenting it. It's really important for us to be able to calculate, all the work that's being done across the PRISM, and especially, at the Nature Conservancy, we're working towards some pretty lofty 2030 goals, and those metrics filter into that. So it helps us document the impact you're having in the Adirondacks across the Appalachians and more. And just for a little statistic, about 75% of terrestrial monitoring work that happens in our PRISM is done by our partners. So we really appreciate it, and just please keep documenting your data. We know that there's projects happening that we don't have data for, so just a plug to keep submitting data. And I'm not sure if we have time for questions, Brian, or if you want to keep plugging along.
I think we have time. We can do a couple questions. So thank you. Good questions for Carolyn or Ari or Sean or Anna out there. We have a couple minutes. We can chat about that. If there's something online, if somebody on the chat has put anything in, I can't see from where I'm sitting.
I have a quick one to Ari, actually. Ari, maybe you talked about this other places, but could you just really quickly, where are the AAU controls already set out? Like you mentioned, you put the PANs out to monitor and see how those populations are established. So what general locations are those in?
So I can speak to like the APIPP Managed project. That's out of a private parcel in Johnsburg, in Warren County. New York State Parks did the first in Adirondacks release at Point of Rush State Park, Point of Rush. Before my time, beginning of COVID roughly. And I think there are other releases that are started this year in Adirondack Park as well that are not.
And then Angela will talk about it, but they released bio until it's up here. Starting back in 2019.
Was this year? 2019 or 2021, COVID kind of threw right in the middle of that.
Yeah, so there's a few spots where around there that people have released bio, which is for Emerald Ash for, and yeah, we're gonna hear much more about that later on.
So our understanding of it is that all of the reared parasitic loss come from the USDA rearing facility, and they are kind of like in demand. So they accept applications on normally at the end of the year. They announce in the spring where the new locations will be, and they try to not do more than one per county because of how it is. That's really fascinating. Thank you.
One more question? We have time for one more question?
We do have one in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, Marcus wants to know, are you guys able to provide any info on impacts of surf boat wakes and salt infiltration on invasives?
Wake boats. So wake boats is definitely a topic that a lot of our lake associations and other people are interested in. The main concern that we have about this is that these are special type of vessels that have a very large water tank in the back of the boat, so they can suck in a lot of water to push the boat down to make a bigger wave for people to recreate on. Problem is that when they empty that water tank, they don't empty 100% of it. So there's still water in there. They are moving from lake to lake. They could potentially be moving invasive species, like especially the small bodied organisms, water fleas, zebra mussels, things like that. That's our main concern about that, and it definitely is a topic that we're working with AWI and lots of lake associations kind of on. Anna's heavily involved in that. And the second one was about salt.
Salt infiltration on invasives, yeah.
I have not heard. Has anybody else heard about anybody specifically looking between that connection between salt and invasives?
I haven't, no. A lot of that research is focused more on native species.
Yeah. We'll have to look more into that. I haven't seen anybody going through there. So we'll have to see. We can follow up with you later about that, Marcus.
But these are great questions that help spawn research ideas. So thank you for the question.
These are the exact things that Carol and I are talking about. Yes. Okay. Well, I'm up next. Thank you. Good. Yeah, so like we've all been saying, this common theme, we are a small but mighty crew of 5 people trying to work up here on this giant, amazing landscape. And our mission is to work in partnership with the different organizations and communities here to try to reduce the impacts of invasive species on our lands, waters, and communities. And so we can't do everything, but we want to try to be a resource to provide information to help out where we can. And a big role of that is trying to help answer questions. So, you look out on our Adirondack lakes, they look, beautiful and serene and, perfect in many ways. But sometimes when you come into them and look underneath the water, you can start to see that there's some non-native species that have come there and start to cause problems. So, our largest one for the aquatics is invasive milfoils. Eurasian water milfoil, Myriophyllum spicatum, variable leaf milfoil, Myriophyllum heterophyllum. They're in 130 water bodies in the Adirondack. So out of our 163, 166 invasive water bodies, they are in the majority of them. And the problem is that when they get to really large abundances, they can cause negative impacts on our wetlands. They displace native plants. They can impact water quality, and they can impact people's use of the lake, by boating or swimming or fishing. So a lot of communities are doing management of them. They are paying to have these plants removed with a variety of ways. There's 3 typical categories: biological, putting in an animal to control and eat them; chemical, so putting in like a pesticide to control the invasive plant; or mechanical, doing like hand harvesting, where you can see a diver's reaching down and trying to harvest this out. all management practices have both positive and negative impacts to this. So, when the person's going down there and pulling that up, they're, reaching into this substrate and they're like disturbing some of the substrate. They're suspending some nutrients and materials around there. There's some bycatch. Same thing, when we do chemical management, people are concerned about the chemical impacts and also the non-target impacts on there. So lots of people started asking me questions, and especially when Priscillacor started being approved to use in the Adirondacks, they started asking questions like, hey, what are the impacts about that? And the idea, we have lots of research on how managing milfoil impacts plants, both the invasive plants we're trying to remove and the native plants that we're trying to protect. So we have lots and lots of good research on that. We have less research about water quality. Hey, what's going on in the water that's surrounding these? And so people started asking me, and I tried to look into it, like, well, hey, there's not a lot of really good data. So this seems like one of these research questions where APIPP and partners can kind of step out and help, because if you look at the potential water quality impacts that could come through managing milfoil, well, the two main things that people are typically talking about being concerned about is like nutrients and algae. So nutrients, like when you're disturbing the substrate or something, doing DASH or diver-assisted suction harvesting, which is called DASH, or hand harvesting, so you could disturb the substrate, resuspend sediments and nutrients. When the plants die back, they have nutrients in them, and so then they could release them back into the water column. Also algae and organic matter. So this changing in the increased nutrients could change the algal loads. And also there's can be changes in competitions. If you don't have a plant-dominated water body, you're going to have an algal-dominated water body. So if you take off all the plants, you're favoring an algal-based system. So lots of different things could happen. And so the question we had was, what does water quality data show for lakes that are managing milfoils? So the first thing you have to ask yourself is, well, where could we get water quality data from? So we want to try to answer this question. And it just happens that we have this great program called the Adirondack Lakes Assessment Program. It's a partnership between Paul Smith College, Adirondack Watershed Institute, and Protect the Adirondacks. And for over 25 years, they've been out monitoring lakes through community scientists who go out, collect a monthly water quality sample, and then give it to the lab, and they report this back to them. And it just so happened that many of the lake associations that we were working with have been taking part of this program for some of them decades. So we have this great data source that we could look back into. And so this is how it goes. You go out to, traditionally how it works, you go out to the middle of your lake, the deep water hole is it called. You put a 2-meter tube down so it grabs a sample from the upper 2 meters of the water column. And then you also do a Secchi disc where you drop down this disc to see the water clarity for it. So like I said, traditionally, they're just doing one monitoring point right in the middle of the lake. But if we want to look at how milfoils are impacting, how the treatment of milfoils, that doesn't happen in the middle of your lake. That happens in the shallow waters of your lake. So we had to add 2 additional monitoring points. One, and this like yellow one right here, is in an area that had milfoil and they're actively treating. And then we wanted to have another comparison one, another shallow water area that has milfoil, but they're not treating. So we can look at these. And so, so in theory, what would it look like? How would we see this data? Oh, let me get back to disconnected. Maybe it's what's going on? So this is hypothetical right now. So hypothetically, you could say like your open water place and your treatment place, like they could just be different. Like they could just be fundamentally different areas. So you would have 2 different lines from it. So that's one potential outcome you could have. Another one is that you could have no change, that, hey, they kind of go up and down and they kind of like parallel kind of each other. Or you could say like, okay, we had this area where we did a treatment and then we did the treatment around here. And then after that treatment, after that management, the lines diverge. So it looks like, okay, they're going in different directions, and maybe that could be because of the management technique. So these are kind of like your theoretical models of how it could work. So we partnered with 5 lake associations. Some people are here, like Bill, in Upper Chattagay and Racket Lake, Paradox Lake, East Caroga, and Chazy Lake. All these lakes have been managing milfoils for decade plus. on them. And you can see it shows a species. One of them, Racket Lake, was variable. All the other ones were Eurasian. And then they have different management techniques: dash, diver assisted suction harvesting, chemical. Sometimes they're doing multiple ones like chemical and hand, hand harvesting, chemical and hand. And then we have Middle Saranac Lake, which is kind of like a control lake. It has Eurasian water milfoil, but it does not, there's no management going on. And then also Fonsby Pond, which has no invasive plants in it. And so that's kind of like more of a reference one. So I don't have time to go through every single lake and combination example right there, but if that's your lake and you're interested in the data, reach out to me. We can talk more about it there. Okay, so we're going to just go through a few lake examples. So the first one is Middle Saranac. So this is kind of like our control lake. There's no management going on, but it has abundant milfoil. So we went out and monitored in the deep water location and then in the shallow water location. So, and this lake has fairly abundant Eurasian water milfoil in it. So you'll see a series of graphs. They're all like this. So on the horizontal axis, the x-axis is just time. So we did this for 2 years, 2024 and 2025, once a month, May through September. So we have 10 different sampling points. And the blue line is the open water, so the deep hole, and then the green is the shallow water where there's milfoil present but no treatment going on. So when you look at these graphs of total nitrogen and total phosphorus, what do you see? What jumps out to you?
Phosphorus takes a jump in a couple of locations.
Yeah, so like, there's some like little variation, goes up and down, different things, but for the most part, they're pretty similar. The trends are similar. One goes up, the other one goes up, one goes down, the other one goes up. We do have this interesting one kind of here where you see it towards the end, like total phosphorus goes in the opposite direction. Not 100% sure right there. You'll see another data point on this next one that shows the same similar thing. So, here's chlorophyll A and CDOM, colored dissolved organic matter. So just measuring like how much material is productive materials in there. So overall, following same, we get this big spike of chlorophyll A. That was the same time we had that big spike of phosphorus. Maybe that was, maybe Anna and I actually got a little bit too deep in the sampling thing and cooled up there. Not 100% sure what happened. But overall, what you're seeing is that there's some difference, but overall, they seem to track the same. So this is good because this is our control lake. So if the lines were completely separate or all the way totally apart, then that would mean like the historic deep water hole probably isn't a good representation of shallow water monitoring. So what we take from this control lake is, hey, it looks like these places are similar enough. They have some slight differences, which is what we want to see, but they're not exactly the same. So we can hopefully use this data in other lakes that are doing management to compare those areas. Okay, so let's take Chazy Lake. Right next to Chattagay Lake in Lake Champlain Basin watershed. It's a large lake that has Eurasian water milfoil in several bays and inlets, and they've been using DASH, diver assisted suction harvesting, for years on it. So we're going to see the same types of graphs, but now there's going to be a new color on there. So the yellow color now, that is an area that is shallow water, and they are actively doing management. They have a treatment zone in there. So once again, you'll see that overall, like you see, these are nutrients, so total nitrogen, total phosphorus. You'll see like kind of go up and down, like a little bit, but generally when they kind of crest and fall together, you kind of get one outlier right there in the open water place where the nitrogen and phosphorus both went up at those times. So that is nutrients, and then this is our chlorophyll A and organic matter. So, once again, hey, same trend, like it starts high, it goes low, they come back up, they go down, they kind of bounce around. They're overall staying in a pretty similar and narrow range for them. So this was from Chazy Lake from 3 monitoring locations there. The last one I want to talk about is Paradox Lake. So this was a lake that we've been working with for a long time, when they saw that they've been doing hand harvesting for years, but despite their hand harvesting efforts, they saw milfoil rapidly increase, especially in the upper basin of the lake. So they're trying to manage it and remove this plant, but the plant is growing faster than they can remove it. And they were looking at our lake management tracker data and some other different things and saying, hey, we're not seeming to get where we want to get. We need to do a different management technique. So from 2018 to 2023, they were doing historic hand harvesting. In 2024, they decided to do chemical management. So this is the same year that we're doing this project. So we can see their data here. So this is 2 years. So they applied the chemical to the place that was in the yellow treatment bar in June 4th of the first year. So right at the very beginning of there. And once again, you can see like, hey, stuff goes up and down, but they kind of follow a very similar kind of trend for all of them. And it's not like we see these lines kind of like completely diverging, or after we see this management, like they're going off in two totally different slopes or directions. So this is for Paradox Lake for nutrients. And then this is chlorophyll A for there. So you can see, they kind of move around. Sometimes the shallow water one where there's no treatment is higher. Sometimes the area where there was, this is, 5 months after treatment, like spikes a little bit, but overall they kind of stick in the range with it. And then another way to look at this data is, so this is looking at just from May of 2024 to September of 2025. So just 2 field seasons. But these lakes have been collecting this data at the deep water hole for decade plus for some of these ones. So another way to look at this is what's called a box plot. So this first box plot, this is 10 years worth of data of chlorophyll A. And so it's showing you the whole range of values that they've gotten from 10 years worth of data. And then we have our 3 other areas for 2 years worth of data. The open water one, the deep water hole, so same location as this one. The shallow water where there's milfoil but no management. And then the treatment one where there's milfoil and they're actively managing it. And so we see this for chlorophyll A on the left and for total nitrogen on the right. And what you see from these graphs, these box plots, is that if you kind of follow them kind of over and compare them to the historic, they're right in line. They're same line. Some of these actually, like we're seeing less chlorophyll A, less algal matter in Paradox Lake in these areas from the past 2 years than we've traditionally seen in the past. For total nitrogen, it's right in line with what we've seen from them. So all of these are different ways of examining the data, but they are showing us that we're not seeing any large scale impacts to these water quality parameters when we analyze them and look at these patterns for it. So that's a lot to kind of throw at you all at once and different things. And if you want to see the raw data or see any more for your lake or different things, let me know and we can pull that out for you. But in summary, these are broad water quality measurements. We're measuring the upper water column, the upper 2 meters of there in these lakes that are very large and well mixed. So one potential thing we could say is like, well, maybe this is too coarse of a tool to be using to assess the impacts of these invasive plants or the treatments on there. So I just want to mention that. Also, interestingly, we looked in areas where we had lakes that did no milfoil management, and also in areas of lakes that have milfoil and they're not actively managing. And in those areas themselves, we're not seeing very negative water quality parameters in those areas. So that is important to recognize in the state that at low abundances or low to medium to low abundances, we don't see these invasive milfoils harming the water quality. It's only generally when they get to the typically densest levels that we start to see these impacts that are so large that they start to impact some of these water quality parameters on them. So brings up some interesting questions about like, when do you need to do management? Is it best to do it when it's small or when it's medium or when it's large? Also, we want to note that these lakes have been managing milfoils for decades. So, we're just getting this little snapshot in time. Most of these lakes, they have milfoil present, but it's not what I would call like a, super high abundance, super chronic, problem with them. So good, that's good news. We're not seeing water quality impacts from this. So the results from this indicate that we don't see any of these large scale impacts from management, that either through the chemical management or through diverse assisted suction harvesting or through hand harvesting. We're not seeing some impacts. There is some groups that we've worked with down at like SUNY Adirondacks that they looked in Lake George, and they did some very short-term water quality monitoring. Like they would go out like the same day that they were doing hand harvesting and like the day after, and they found like very short little spikes of like nutrient release because as they're pulling stuff up, they're resuspending sediment and different things like this. But those were very short and temporary. And then when you're looking across like a whole entire 1,000+ acre lake, those things kind of tend to get washed out. So this data seems to support our hypothesis that management done correctly shouldn't negatively impact the water quality of a lake. If you think about this with, the different ways, even the, pulling the plants out, putting the chemical in, they're generally doing this in very small targeted areas and areas that have, very limited duration. And so doing these management techniques the correct way, we shouldn't really see any impacts. And this data does not show that we see any impacts from the water quality. So I just want to say thank you to DEC for funding from the EPF for paying for this, Paul Smith College Adirondack Watershed Institute and Protect the Adirondacks for all the great stuff that they're doing and analyzing the samples. We had so many of these lake associations that were out there sampling out there. It wasn't just me and Anna out doing this. We also had some of our seasonals come out there. And so, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think let's see if this will play. I'll always give you another plug for this. A cool part about being a community scientist or a regular paid environmental scientist like this, sometimes you just get to go out there and you get to be like on these really cool days. Here we are on Middle Saranac on like the calmest, glassiest day like I've ever been out there. And going out and getting to know your lake, collecting a sample once a month from it, you get to see it in all sorts of different things. So I'm a big proponent of community scientists and people going out and observing nature and different things like that. So thank you to everybody who helped us do that. And I think I might have a time for a question or two, if anyone has a question.
Can the hand harvest or mechanical harvest method actually cause spread of the plant?
Yep. Yeah. So Eurasian water milfoil and variable leaf milfoil. If you go down and pull the plant up, you're either putting it in a bag or you're putting it in a suction pipe to suck it up to the boat. If part of it gets broken off and that part floats away, then it can go float to a new part of your lake and settle down in the muck and then regrow. So the companies and the divers that are doing that, they're trying to do their best. Usually they have somebody working underneath the water, collecting it. They usually have another person on the top in like a small kayak who's got like a little net. He's trying to pick up some of them. But once again, all management techniques have positives and negatives. One of the negative aspects of that is that there are some floaters that are getting away and spreading to other areas. And then there's the other type. There's another type of mechanical harvesting where it's like mowing the lake, where you just have a giant like 3-foot swath that just goes through and just cuts it, and that's just making endless fragments. And you're just trying to mow you're just trying to keep the plants out of the water column. You're not trying to get rid of them there. It's a different strategy.
So you would not recommend that?
We only recommend that if kind of a last case scenario, like if you're, hey, we don't have the resources or the effort or time to try to suppress or contain it. We're just going to mow the lake.
The name of the chemical, and what is its impact? Is there any known impact on other aquatic species?
Yeah, so the most commonly used chemical for aquatic invasive species in the Adirondacks is Priscillocor. It is a auxin mimic. So it is a chemical that they can put in at very low concentration that's fairly targeted to milfoils. Also, they're putting it in, once again, like talking about like doing management the right way shouldn't have an impact. One of the things that like you could say is like, oh, it could like hurt the nutrients or the biological oxygen demand. Like if you let all the plants grow up really large and then you put this chemical in and then within 3 weeks, all those plants die. But typically we are doing the management, chemical management, like in May and June before the plants get very big. So you're not having that full water column die off and oxygen demand. So once again, it's about doing management correctly so we don't have these impacts for water quality.
That was my last question. Is there any impact on dissolved oxygen?
We do not measure dissolved oxygen with these tests. There are some research in very large infestation stands of milfoil that show when you get this very large and dense milfoil that if you it stagnates the water, it doesn't allow much surface water oxygen exchange. So in those stands, you can see lower dissolved oxygen ones. We did not measure dissolved oxygen. Maybe that is a follow-up thing to kind of do. It's just one that not one of the what dissolved oxygen needs to be measured in the field. If you're taking a water sample and sending it back to a lab, they can't really measure it. Any other questions? Anybody online? Is there any online questions, Sean?
Questions. There's a comment about if a dead organic matter from treatment will cause weed rebound as it is nutrient rich.
The plants are dead. They will not grow back. They're talking about increased nutrients from those plants. Generally, most of these plants are kind of when they harvest them and they remove them, we generally try to compost them in fields and different things. It is the farmers and things you take, and they're like, it's not really that good. It doesn't really, it doesn't. There's not a lot of super nutrients in it, but you are removing nutrients from the lake by doing dash and hand harvesting. So there is some of that. When you do the chemical management, like when the plants die and senescent back there, it's once again you're doing it earlier in the season, so you're getting less nutrients because they're dying earlier than if you just let them alone. They would grow to full height, they would grow more, then they would release even more nutrients into there. So yeah, great question.
Right.
Okay.
You're refreshing my memory, but I believe isn't that the mechanism for chemical how it works? Is it causes rapid accelerated growth to the plant support itself and die? Is that how?
Yeah, so Priscillocor is an auxin, is a growth hormone mimic. So it's systemic. The plant takes it in to it all the way down to the root system, which is the key part. And then the individual cells just grow so quick that they just grow and they break apart. So it essentially just breaks itself apart from there. And that's the good thing about it, because with hand harvesting or dash or benthic barriers, if you just grab like the top of a milfoil plant, it will just it'll just break off, and the roots down below they'll just grow back. It's fine. So you have to really, that's why when they're doing the mechanical stuff, they're actually putting their hands into the sediment. They're trying to grab as many of the roots. If they get like half the roots and pull it out, then that's good, but the other half that's in there will just regrow. So that's why some places if it's really rocky substrate, hand harvesting doesn't work very well. If there's a ton of native species and their like roots are intertangled in there with the invasive, so like South Bay, like where you are, really hard down there to the inlet to pull them out of those things. So yeah, that's why we're always talking about using different tools at different times in different places.
Last question.
Yep, last one.
Has anyone ever thought of laying down like mats?
Yep, benthic barriers. Yep, that's a technique that we generally only works. You can't mat a very large area. It's just very cumbersome, hard to do. It's a good technique to do like right in front of your dock or like right in front of there, just for like a small area. Just keep They have specialized mats that you put down that you have to weight down, but that also kills everything underneath it. It kills all the native plants and things there too. So once again, every management technique has positives and negatives about it. It's about using the right tool at the right place at the right time. So I'm happy to talk more about this. I'm also going to be presenting a very similar but slightly longer version of this at Nexpolo on Friday. So yeah, thanks so much. And we're going to end this one. And we're going to switch PowerPoints as Angelo is going to come up and talk about Emerald Ash Borer. No. No. All right, are we good online? Can people see the presentation?
Still loading, but.
Not yet.
Not yet. All right.
Now we can.
All right, awesome. And I think let's see if this I click in here. You use the down button, Angelo. No advance support. Awesome.
All right, thanks, Brian. Let's hear for Brian. Excellent. Oh, my name again is Angello Johnson. I'm the acting land resource program manager here at the Regis Mohawk Tribe. And today I will be talking about the Emerald Ash Borer in Akwesasne and how we at the Regis Mohawk Tribe are implementing our EAB mitigation strategies. So a little introduction. So I'm a Wolf Clan Mohawk right from Akwesasne, family man, I have a wife and 2 daughters. You know, familial ties are really big for me, and you know, passing on this generational knowledge is one of my life missions. You know, I'm a 6th generation basket maker and teacher. I also teach basket making. I've been doing that for a few decades now, and yep, I really love it. I love being connected to nature and the natural resources, and then being able to share the knowledge and the skills that I've learned, and also the technical and scientific skills that I've picked up along the way. You know, it's really awesome to have you know, my passion with basket making, traditional basket making, log pounding, go hand in hand with my professional career. You know, it's just so rewarding and fulfilling day in and day out. You know, I'm currently the acting land resource program manager. Before that, you know, for the last 5 years or so, I've been the land resource technician for the field crew. And, you know, we're boots on the ground. We're out there in the forest, implementing these strategies, you know, combating invasive species, doing some shoreline restoration projects, you know, really just boots on the ground, you know, heading the field team in that manner. And, you know, it's been so rewarding being out there. So our land resource program, we have a few different aspects of the program. We have the field team. Like I said, we go out and we implement and, you know, act on these strategies that we have. We have a native plant nursery that grows out, you know, different native plant species that we use to bolster our restoration efforts, you know, within the program and other programs throughout the Regis Mohawk Tribe. And we also have a tribal pesticide technician that works with, you know, the regulation sides of our pesticide and herbicide use. You know, we have many partners, you know, U.S. Forest Service, New York State DEC, USDA APHIS, USET, St. Lawrence, Franklin County, Soil and Water, you know, APIPP, Cornell Cooperative Extensions, the list goes on. We really appreciate, you know, all these partnerships and you know, cooperatives that come together and really help us nail down these objectives that we're chasing. So a quick little outline of my presentation. I'm going to be talking about the EAB impacts in Akwesasne, both culturally and physically, you could say. I'm going to go over the timeline of, you know, when the Emerald Ash Borer was introduced, once we discovered it here in Akwesasne. up until now. I'm gonna touch on the Regis Mohawk Tribe APIPP mitigation goals. You know, it's what it's all about. It's what all this effort is for. Then we're gonna go over the tactics, the different tactics that we've used, the different mitigation strategies that we've implemented and layered within these black ash stands that we've worked so hard to preserve. And you know, I'll talk about the outcomes, you know, the results of the fruits of our labor, and you know what I foresee hopes for the future. So the emerald impacts within Akwesasne, the cultural impacts, you know, number one is the impact on black ash basketry. So I know everybody's here is very familiar with the emerald ash borer and the impacts it has on not just black ash, but white ash, green ash, all the ash that we have. And you know, the white ash, black ash, and green ash are they're all used within black ash basketry. It's not just the black ash, you know. The white ash and the green ash, they grow faster than the black ash, so those growth rings, you know, a lot better to carve and work with when you're making the handles and the rims like that, you know, part of the baskets that need to be really sturdy. So the impacts on the cultural, you know, the baskets, we here in Akwesasne, they're practical, and you know, a lot of them are used every day, you know, everyday use. Like I said, I'm a basket maker, and I make these pack baskets. I've seen these, you know, throughout the community being used day in, day out, whether it's out hunting, fishing, you know, working in the garden, gathering food or medicines out in the forest. You know, there's a ton of different ways that baskets can be configured and used. One of the really cool ways are a corn wash basket. So a corn wash basket has a special weave, a particular weave, so that way the walls of the basket are actually used to scour traditional white corn, Iroquois white corn, and you know, that's cooked and boiled and processed with wood ash and the scouring method of the basket itself to actually remove the hull of the corn and you know, make it readily available. It enhances the nutrients within the food itself, and you know, it's just one of these traditional ways of preparing and storing food. And you know, we use baskets for carrying babies, and you know, there's just the possibilities are endless. This resource has just been so phenomenal, and you know, really helpful to Native communities, you know, all throughout the northeastern woodlands, from the, you know, people of the Don in Maine, the Penobscot, Abenakis, you know, right on through to the Great Lakes. You know, we also use the black ash baskets in ceremonies. You know, when we go to the longhouses where we gather to, you know, pay respects to these different aspects in nature, like the Honolulu Dekwa. You know, there's throughout the year we have different ceremonies for different seasons and different things like that are, you know, coming about at that time of year. And you know, in Longhouse, that ceremonial space, you know, it's really encouraged for people to come and bring baskets and carry, you know, things of a natural resource instead of, you know, metal plates and cups and things like that. You know, it's just really helps keep the space intact there. And it's also, you know, such a great tool for relationships, you know, not just baskets, but the entire process of basket making. For weddings, for example, you know, baskets are exchanged as a symbol of, it's like vows, you know, the symbol of how you're going to take care of each other and what you have to offer. And, you know, just that symbol of your love and your commitment to one another. You know, it's very symbolic and very, very sacred to many people. And, you know, the passing of this knowledge, the process of, you know, identifying a black ash tree, seeing what the best qualities are within the tree, harvesting the tree, you know, where to harvest it, taking it out of the forest, how to process it, you know, turn that tree into splints usable for basketry. You know, it's a long process, and it's very labor intensive, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong. But if you do it right, you know, the rewards are endless and amazing. You know, and I was kind of brought into this craft as a teenager. You know, I was probably 13, 14 years old when when my father, yoked me up and brought me over to my great uncle's house. And I had a great uncle, he was an old iron worker at the time. And well, he had just retired, and his back and his legs were shot from, decades of hard work building skyscrapers. So in his retirement, he moved on to basket making. And, he understood the process, and he pounded logs and things like that when he was a kid, taught to him from his father and his uncles. And, after he retired, that's kind of what he got into. And it was right around that same time that my father would bring me over there to help him pound logs and drag the trees out because he was in crutches and a wheelchair and couldn't really get around. So, it was such a blessing, to go and be a part of that process. My great uncle, he's passed now. So, I was really fortunate to be able to get those lessons and that knowledge, so that way I could pass it on. So relationships through baskets and basket making is so huge. There's all kinds of other traditional crafts that we use ash trees for. Lacrosse sticks, typically they're made out of hickory and big heavy sticks. Those are for, adults, but the ash tree is used for making little sticks for babies and toddlers, things like that, because once it dries, it's very light, but it's still very strong. It's perfect for bows, snowshoes, different types of tools and handles, you name it. I mean, it's such an amazing wood to work with. The grain is so smooth and nice. It's just so great for carving. So those are some of the cultural impacts that the Emerald Ash Borer have had within our community. But some of the environmental impacts, we're seeing changes to the composition of our forests. Right now, there's rapid ash tree mortality within our community. Roughly 15 to 20% of our local tree population are ash, green, white, or black. And, since the impacts, we've gone from seeing like epicormic shoots and blonding on the trees. Now we're seeing the, large scale ash mortality. And, that has cascading effects, the domino effect throughout, the different ecosystems, and the impacts on hydrology change, because the studies have shown that the ash trees will actually draw water up and release it throughout the day. And that, really helps regulate the water tables and the hydrology of a site. And once that's impacted, who knows what kind of changes it's going to have on the different animals and plants and, medicines that all thrive within those types of stands. And there's also a lot of hazards too. So once these ash trees die from the emerald ash borer, the tree itself becomes very brittle. And I'm a chainsaw operator, New York State certified logger, and cutting down parasitized or an ash tree that's been impacted by emerald ash borer and it's been standing dead for a while. And those trees are extremely dangerous. When directionally felling a tree, you gotta keep your notch a certain percentage and angle open. Your back cut has to, you have to have so much holding wood to direct the tree. But when they get impacted like that, and then those outermost layers of the tree are paper thin and brittle, you lose a lot of that control within the techniques used for directional felling. So being out there in the forest stands, cutting these trees, it can become really, really hazardous in that occupation. And with these massive die-offs of the ash trees, all these standing dead trees, dying kind of all in the same time frame, it's like a tidal wave going out. There's an increase in wildfire fuel. Our forests are littered with dead, dying trees, and just loaded up with standing dry wood. And the wildfires out west get pretty nasty, and I'd hate to see that close to home. And along the riverbanks, with those trees and those roots, no longer doing their thing, that's also going to lead to increased erosion. So there's a lot of things to think about. It's not just the trees that are getting impacted. It has cascading effects. So this is a quick timeline of EAB within Akwesasne. The first detection of emerald ash borer was in 2016. It was on a purple sticky trap. It was just a passive monitoring for any type of forest pests, and that's when we first found the emerald ash borer. After that, we started implementing more specialized monitoring techniques, specifically to trap emerald ash borer, to capture any emerald ash borer coming through. So once we heard about the emerald ash borer and how awful and devastating it can be, really wanted to jump on this and tackle this issue as soon as we could. So we did a delimitation survey, EAB delimitation survey in 2018. And what that was is we set up a grid system over Akwesasne, quarter-mile square grid system. And in each one of those grid plots, we tried to establish a sentinel tree. So sentinel tree is where we strip the bark off around the base, ash trees specifically. So we strip the bark off around the base. That stresses the tree out. The tree releases, these stress pheromones that are very, very attractive to the emerald ash borer. So any ash borer within that quarter mile would fly over healthy trees to get to that stressed out tree. And it was a great delimitation survey. I went and I set up over 200 ash trees as sentinel trees, and that was throughout the spring and summer. Those trees were infested, and then in the wintertime we circled back. We harvested all 200 trees, took 1 meter samples from the top canopy sections, and with our partners in USDA APHIS and US Forest Service, we were able to collect data from peeling back those logs, counting the larvae and their different stages of life, the instar stages. And we're actually able to figure out how long they've been there, population density, and current spread. So we were actually able to get a heat map generated here in Akwesasne that showed the current spread, population densities, and positive hits and the places that haven't been impacted yet. And with that data, it was very instrumental in developing our EAB mitigation strategies from there on. That qualified us for the control release program. Because USDA APHIS, like Jessica had mentioned, these parasitoid wasps are in high demand. They can only rear so much at these facilities, and when they mail them out, it's they want success. They want these biocontrol releases to be effective. So with that delimitation survey, we're actually able to prove that emerald ash borer is here on our doorstep. We do have trees and spaces that are impacted, but it's not too far gone that we still have a chance to save some of these resources. If you're too early, there's no emerald ash borer for the parasitoids to eat. So you're not going to get the biocontrols. And if you're too late in the game, what's the point? Releasing parasitoids into a devastated ash stand. What are you trying to do there? So it was really instrumental in developing our EAB mitigation strategies. We started our strategies in 2019 with identifying, selecting sites out in New York State forests, on the state forests across Franklin County, St. Lawrence County, mostly Franklin County. A lot of our sites are closer to Akwesasne than further away, just because the cultural practice and harvest areas are pretty close to Akwesasne. So that's where we wanted to focus first. And now we're slowly branching out with our efforts. So by the time 2022 came around, it was very evident within Akwesasne of the impacts of the emerald ash borer. We're seeing bark splitting, canopy dieback, just trees starting to die left and right. And the wave of the invasion basically came from the west and the north parts of our territory, and since have just swept across the entire reservation. And now here in 2026, we're seeing these hazard trees everywhere in people's yards, around their homes, over their cars, over the power lines, up and down the roads, just everywhere you look, these dead ash trees are just extremely hazardous. And that's where we're at now with the emerald ash borer. So the heart of our mission, the mitigation goals, we really want to protect the black ash, all the ash species. We're trying to prolong our time with these resources so that way we can, turn them into usable splint material, get them out to the community members, folks that are going to actually use it and turn it into baskets. Otherwise, it's just going to be standing deadwood splinters, bug food in the forest. So really put in that effort and hard work so that we can actually preserve these cultural resources for those cultural practices. We'd love to provide black ash splints to the community. Actually, this month in May, we'll be pounding logs every Thursday throughout the month over at the Akwesasne Cultural Center. And it's a great time. You'll get a glimpse of this later on when we go outside to pound some logs. But we'll be pounding logs all day over at the library, and all the resources, all the splints that we generate there are donated to the cultural center, and they distribute it through their channels. And it's really about preserving the knowledge and these cultural teachings, and this overwhelming sense of respect for natural resources, very paramount to a lot of the things we do here in Akwesasne. So some of our EAB mitigation tactics include tree injections, biocontrol releases, silvicultural prescriptions, log harvesting of basket quality logs, and seed collection efforts. So with the tree injections, I actually brought our injection tool. Some of you may be familiar with this. This is an ArborJet airjet system. So it's a pressurized system that uses air to push a chemical, emamectin benzoate, into the trunk of a tree. So stem injections for the trees, the emamectin benzoate chemical will actually protect the tree from emerald ash borer 3 to 4 years. It's basically a vaccine, a shot the tree gets to keep the bugs off of it. The only thing with this type of treatment is after 3 to 4 years, the resistance start to wear down. So we got to double back and re-inject. Our biocontrol releases, we release 3 species. Mainly, we got the Obius agrilli, the Tetrasticus, and the Spathius galeni. When we receive these, they come in a couple different forms. We get adult Spathius galeni and Tetrasticus in Dixie cups. They send them to us live in Dixie cups. And then with the Obius agrilli, they'll actually ship that to us in these little pill bottles. They have eggs on, it's almost like a coffee strainer stuffed up in there. You hang that from the tree, and then once those eggs hatch, they crawl out and do their thing. And then the Tetrasticus, I don't know if you can see this back here, but they have these little bolts that are covered in wax. And now what it does, they have EAB within those bolts that have been parasitized by the Tetrasticus. So once we get those, we hang them out in the forest, let them sit for a while, and then the bugs, eventually come out and do their thing. Our silvicultural prescriptions and log harvesting, we have a very strict site selection criteria. When we're going and picking out these black ash stands, it's not just any cluster of black ash. We really want to find stands that are showing promising, healthy black ash basket quality trees. We're looking for nice healthy seed trees. We're also looking for we're looking at the understory, seeing how many saplings and seedlings of black ash are coming up. And during our silvicultural prescriptions, what it is, it's basically like weeding a garden. We're going in, we're cutting out the scraggly looking trees, the trees with defects, and any like dead or invasive species like that. And just making sure that the trees that we are leaving have enough space to grow. And it has so many benefits. Opening it up like that lets more light through the canopy to help those seedlings and saplings sprout up and grow faster. And with more space in between the trees that we do leave on site actually start to grow a lot faster and put on more, basically more meat in the growth rings as they go. When they start getting impacted by the emerald ash borer, those growth rings, which is what we process down and split apart to actually make this stuff, is it gets paper thin when the emerald ash borer starts attacking it, and it becomes unusable. And it's really sad to see like such a nice big healthy tree, and you get into it and you got 10 layers all within like an eighth of an inch, and it's just totally unusable. You can put a lot of time and effort into pulling off those damaged layers to get down further into the tree to the time that before it was infested by the emerald ash borer, and those splints below that timeline are still viable, but it's just so much work that you got to put into it to actually get to the part of the log that's good. So with the stand improvements, these trees put on the growth rings that are a lot more usable for basket making. With seed collection, we really keep an eye out for bumper crop years. We collect seeds from a very, very wide area, cast a big net to catch as many seeds as we can, because we really are trying to preserve the genetic diversity. And we'll stratify those and put them away for long-term storage. And the thing about the seed collection is, not sure many of you know that ash trees don't go to seed every year. They have certain ash years every 3, 7, 10 years, could be between major seed events. And within that short window, the tree could totally succumb to emerald ash borer. So it's very important that we jump on these major seed events and collect as much as we can when we can. And some of the outcomes, the fruits of our labor, we have over 230 ash trees injected. We've participated in the USDA APHIS Biocontrol Release Project since 2021, over 9 different sites. We've approximately treated 20 acres of black ash stands with silvicultural prescriptions. We've seen great improvements. We'll check out one of these sites this afternoon. You'll be able to get a first-hand look of what a silviculturally treated site looks like, and how the improvements have gone from there. We have some trees out there that have been injected too, and they're actually on the table to be re-injected this year. So you'll be able to see what an injected tree looks like, 3-4 years down the road. Over the last several years, we've harvested over 300 black ash logs. We've stored them, processed them, and provided the materials to the community. This is through the Akwesasne Task Force on the Environment. And for the seeds, we have over 10,000 seeds that have been stratified and stored for long-term storage. And we've been working really close with other tribes that are also facing these similar threats to emerald ash borer. It's really important for us to get this message out and to share what we've learned and the obstacles that we've faced with these other tribal communities. Once the threat gets to their door, they'll have a better idea of how to deal with the situation. So really taking care of those relationships like that with other tribal entities and nations, or it goes a long way. So the plans for the future, we're going to keep and preserve the black ash as a cultural resource for as long as we can. We want to continue to protect these black ash sites that we're, through ongoing stewardship agreements. We want to provide logs and split material for future basket makers and artists. Because I'm a 6th generation basket maker. I want my daughters to be 7th generation basket makers. And, one day they have grandkids. One day, if I have grandkids, they'll be 8th generation. And we just want to continue working with other tribes and nations and programs and partners like you to continue mitigating these impacts of the Emerald Ash Borer. And as always, it's all about passing on this knowledge and protecting the sacred. And with that, I'll say Nyangoa, thank you all for coming out here today and spending this time with us and sharing the great work that you all have been a part of. Thank you. Any questions?
What's your question?
Yes.
Actually, you said you're harvesting about 300 plus logs. How, do you have to pound them right away, or maybe kind of wet or something? I understand it from what little I know of it is that if you don't keep them wet, they'll dry up and really hard.
Yeah. So it's definitely a good question. So when we're in the forest doing these silvicultural cuttings and log harvesting, we do it in the dead of winter, right when the floors are frozen solid. We're trying to lessen the impacts that we have in these black ash stands. So we're doing very minimal impact harvesting techniques. We're going in with side-by-sides and these little snow dog machines, the one-track machines that can zigzag in between trees without having to come in with bulldozers and skidders and stuff like that. So that's real important for us. And when we harvest the logs in the middle of winter, we bring them out, we store them, and they're typically good and usable for about 6 months, as long as they're kept off the ground, kind of like in the shade. They'll retain their moisture directly underneath the bark for 6 months, no problem. But after that, we're starting to get into the summer, things are starting warmer, starting to dry out. After that 6-month period of harvesting, in the middle of winter, that's when you got to start thinking about, submerging it in a pond or a lake or river, stream. We find moving water better, because if it kind of sits in stagnant, non-moving water, it starts to ferment and it gets kind of smelly. So fast moving water is the best, that I've seen so far. I've seen because they do last so long in the wintertime, it's not really until the summer that it starts to dry out. We've thought about storing them long term within freezers, and we've heard some efforts out in Adirondack on the Canadian side. They've purchased large freezers and have stored logs long term that way. I haven't really got my hands on the logs over there to really, assess it myself and see, how that quality is preserved within that storage method. But, it's really cool to hear that they can preserve entire logs that way. Was a tractor trailer, like a refrigerated tractor trailer, they were loading logs up in. So it's extremely, probably costs a lot to store logs like that, for however long you're trying to store them. But we're trying to find ways. We do have some studies coming up that are going to be part of, to figure out the best ways to store logs long term. Yes.
Thank you for an incredible and inspiring presentation. When you look at your daughter, who is the 7th generation basket weaver in your family, and when you consider her children, the 8th generation, do you feel cautiously optimistic or scared or hopeful about the mitigation tactics that you have been proactive with implementing on your land? Do you think that the seventh and eighth generation basket makers will have black ash to harvest on their lands because of your efforts?
I am hopeful. You know, it's a lot of hard work, and you know, this is what we do it for them. And but it's also scary, you know, because Gamma Dashboard is rolling through, and it's basically just a tidal wave of destruction. And you know, trying to shelter these little pockets, you know, before that wave just takes it away. It's really how could you say, like, it really gets me going. You know, I really want to jump on these tasks and do as much as I can, as fast as I can, as hard as I can, to preserve as much as I can, you know, because these resources are finite, and you know, the impacts of them on dashboard are just going to make these numbers dwindle further and further, and pretty soon, you know, all we're going to have left is what we've been actively working towards preserving. So there is hope that you know, the next two generations of basket makers will still have resources, but it's scary to think that if we don't stay on top of this, they won't.
Awesome. Well, there we go. Angello, thank you. Stand up here for a second longer. You know, a lot of times that's a great transition question. And Angello will be here, and we're going to be out pounding logs and going to see. So we'll get a lot more chance to go over these questions in there and learn from the awesome work that they're doing. You know, a lot of times people ask me, you know, with like APIPP and different things in the environmental fields, like, hey, like, what does invasive species success mean? You know, and like some people think like it means like we're going to eradicate emerald ash borer, Eurasian water milfoil, and we kind of have to like reframe, you know, what it is. Both APIPP and the St. Regis Mohawk Tribe, like we are not responsible, nor can we control the underlying causes. We are at the whims of those, but we can be active stewards of our lands and waters, and we can make a big difference. And so I am so inspired and by the work that the St. Regis Mohawk Tribe is doing. They are using all the tools in the toolbox: silvicultural, mechanical, chemical, biological, and it is that combination that we'll be going to see, like, we are having success, and there is hope. And there are hope from new tools that we don't even know about, or new things that haven't even been invented yet. So I also share some of that the practical optimism, where yes, this is a big challenge, but this is also an area that we are having success. And I think I am proud to shine a light on the great work that the St. Regis Mohawk Tribe is doing. And so we wanted to present our Adirondack Partnership for the Regional Invasive Species Management Partner Recognition Award for this year to the St. Regis Mohawk Tribe. And Angela, we will give this to you on behalf of that. And maybe we'll have Sean take a picture of you and me about this. But yeah, just really, truly inspiring work of showing that, you know, if you put in the time and effort, if it means something, if you have these great, beautiful parts of your culture, you can really do so much to help protect them. So we are super awesome. Hey, you want to go? Yeah, a little bit of light right here. Oh, you want to go? We'll move over here.
Yeah, go right into the light.
That's probably the singer photo shoot.
We don't need to put a basket in front of them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you grab a basket. I'll hold the
Signal.
Oh, yeah, nice. Yeah, perfect. Okay. Okay, just look right here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we'll do one more. 1, 2, 3. Cool. Thank you.
It's gonna get one. That's fine. So you get one. You got one? Awesome. Well, thank you. Well, it's not just Angelo, it's the whole entire crew. Some of these guys in the back, so they're gonna have to make sure come up and get a photo with them also for it. Congratulations. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, well, just a few other things. We're gonna wrap this up real quick. Thank you so much for everybody staying with us. I am going to just, let's see, bring this up to the very end. right here and give a few other announcements.
You're gonna tell us where the log funding is gonna be, right?
Yep. Yes. Yeah, right out here. Yes, so, real quickly, wanted to let everybody know, thank you so much to some of the people here in the room and, people online. They filled out our partner dashboard. We'll be sharing this around. We have printed out copies, here, and you'll see this in our newsletter going out. So, as I said, it's not just us. We are not, able to do everything. And so over 130,000 boats inspected, 13 partners monitoring for aquatic invasive species, 26 partners overall, different research projects, over 3,000 attendees at events talking about invasive species. We are one of these cases where the sum is greater than the individual part. So we greatly appreciate everybody from showing this and doing this with us. And just to close out, there will be some volunteer opportunities with our forest pest program, with using non-map invasives, lake protectors, lake management tracker. So stay connected to us on our social media and on our newsletter for that. In next month in June, New York Invasive Species Awareness Month is June 8th through 15th. That started here in the Adirondacks. It's now spread all across New York, and we're super thrilled to be hosting different events like we talked about. SLELO is also going to be hosting events in their region. So you can go to any of our websites or just Google New York Invasive Species Awareness Week, and you'll see some ones around you. We'll have a roadside webinar in July of the lake protectors training. And then in August, we'll have another lake protector training. And we're super excited to just announce a Adirondack Invasive Species Summit that will be in southeastern Adirondacks late August, focusing on aquatic plant management. So there'll be more details about that. So with that, I want to say thank you to everybody who joined us both online and in person. We're going to break and have lunch right in here. And then we're going to be doing the log pounding just right out front from us. And then after that, we'll be able to go out and see one of those stands. So everybody take a moment, go to the bathroom. We have some lemonades and maybe some snacks and coffee still left over there. All sorts of hats and outreach material, different things. All this stuff is free. We hope you take one and put it to use. And thank you so much for joining us both online and in person.